Will Twitter ever have enough mass appeal to have any serious effect on an election? Isn't it a very socially exclusive tool?
Well, a site like Twitter certainly has mass appeal in certain areas. I doubt it'll ever have mass appeal in the area of politics, but that probably reflects media generally in the sense that circulation of political material is always much lower than in other areas. But I don't think that means that it'll never have a serious effect on an election. And that's because these things have a direct and an indirect effect. And so you don't need very many people participating in a site like Twitter who can then affect how other people form their opinions and possibly have an effect on an election.
I don't think something has to have a mass audience to have a big effect on an election. I think Twitter actually has been quite a good example of that at the general election that we've just had, because while it's certainly true that the overall audience on Twitter for politics is very small compared to the electorate as a whole, actually for a lot of people in politics and in the media and covering the election in all sorts of different ways, Twitter has become an absolutely essential part of the day-to-day way that you sort of live your life and find information. I think it was Laura Kusenberg, the BBC journalist, who said that Twitter is now the newswire of choice for journalists in Westminster. So although it's maybe not got a big audience, it is having a big impact on the way journalists cover elections, and therefore in turn it is having a big impact on the way the rest of us end up consuming election news.
I think Twitter already has had an effect on the last general election in 2010, and I think one of its qualities is that it doesn't really need to have mass appeal in order to affect a general election. What Twitter does is to drive activism. It drives people who are party obsessives, party members, party supporters, party activists out onto the doorsteps. It drives them to make phone calls on behalf of their local MPs, and it brings people together in order for them to organise online, in order to mobilise offline. I think that's what Twitter really does. The question about social exclusion is a separate question. Of course, we need to make sure that there's broadband in all of our areas and all of our communities, but in terms of how an election is affected, I don't think it needs mass appeal, to be honest, to have an impact.